Fallacies. The word fallacy, as used in logic and rhetoric, is defined as any of various types of erroneous reasoning that render arguments logically unsound. There are a number of fallacies in logic, but the main point to remember is that an argument based on fallacies is an unsound argument. Therefore, if decisions are made based on this unsound argument, those decisions are then unsound. Most people do not like to be misled, and a similar number likely prefer to make good decisions. There are, however, some individuals and groups that use logical fallacies to attempt to mislead other people or groups into making unsound decisions. Fallacies differ from factual error because factual error is simply being wrong about something. To be more specific, a fallacy is an argument in which the premises given for the conclusion do not provide the necessary support to make the conclusion true. A deductive fallacy is defined as a deductive argument that could have all true premises but still have a false conclusion. Additionally, an inductive fallacy is less formal than a deductive fallacy because it is simply an argument in which there appear to be valid inductive arguments. Even if the premises were true, the conclusion would not be more likely to be true. Now, in order to be aware of fallacies, it is important to observe some examples. Now that we know what a fallacy looks like, we will discuss the three major known fallacies: ad hominem, hasty generalization, and either-or fallacy. Mr. X, please offer your rebuttal against or regarding Mr. Y's stance on human rights. My opponent clearly does not believe in human rights because he is pro-choice. This statement would be an example of an ad hominem fallacy. Literally translated, the name of this fallacy means against the man, or against the person. The whole purpose behind an ad hominem fallacy is that an opponent tries to distract one or more groups from the topic at hand by defending him or herself against of addressing the argument, or becomes discredited by any listening group. This fallacy is the most familiar. In the example presented here, there are a number of correlations that are assumed between the beliefs in human rights and being pro-choice, but none of those ideas addresses that point of making a rebuttal on Mr. Y's position on human rights. Women are bad drivers. This is an example of a hasty generalization. This fallacy is defined as making a generalization about a population based upon a sample that is too small to be represented. If the population has a large degree of variation, then the sample needs to be large enough to represent the population's variability. If a population is completely identical, a sample size is one sufficiently large, then there would not be a fallacy, so long as the argument is actually true of that one member of the group. Then it would actually be accurate of the entire population. In the example here, all women would have to be bad drivers in order for the statement to be true. Because some women are professional drivers who make large sums of money at their work, the statement of all women being bad drivers is the fallacy of hasty generalization. If you're not with us, you're against us. George W. Bush and Anakin Skywalker, to name two sources. This statement would be an example of an either-or fallacy, or a false dichotomy. This large fallacy occurs when an argument assumes a problem only has two opposing outcomes, ignoring other possible outcomes. In the above situation, there are a wide variety of ways people can feel about some situations. Even if one does not agree with the United States needs to go to war in Iraq, it does not mean that some individuals plan on working against the U.S. policy to fight terrorism. So how does one discover fallacies in day-to-day activities? Here are some general tips for finding fallacies in arguments. Pretend to disagree with the argument of the person or group who is presenting. What part of the arguments would you now seem fishy to you? What parts would seem easiest to attack? Give special attention to strengthening or weakening those parts. List the main points of any argument under each one. List the evidence being presented for it. Seeing claims and evidence laid out this way make one realize that there is no good evidence for a particular claim. or it may help one to look more critically at the evidence being used. Learn which types of fallacies certain groups or individuals are prone to, and be careful to watch for them in arguments and discussions. Some writers may make appeals to authority. Others are more likely to rely on weak analogies. Beware that broad claims need more proof than narrow ones. Claims that use sweeping words like all, no, none, every, always, never, no one, and everyone are sometimes appropriate, but they require a great deal of more proof than less deductive claims, than the use of words like some, many, few, sometimes, usually, and so forth. Double-check characterizations of others to be sure that they are accurate and fair. Not only are these good strategies to use to avoid being duped, but also they are ideas to use to avoid duping others. When a fallacy is used in a speech or writing, they can be very powerful and convincing. When a large group is convinced of something fallacious, it is difficult to stop the momentum of that group if they want to act upon that fallacious argument. Fallacies can often be used subtly. Slick Willie, former President William Jefferson Clinton, and other politicians are very good at slipping fallacies into speeches. Along with the few fallacies listed here, there are many that can be used, so many that it is important to constantly be on guard. Therefore, it is important to be able to recognize a fallacy. Remember, a fallacy can lead one or many in the wrong direction because it is an unsound argument.